The little girl who had done this was 11, beautifully ugly as little girls are apt to be who are destined, after a few years, to be inexpressibly lovely and bring no end of misery to a great number of men. The spark, however, was perceptible. There was a general ungodliness in the way her lips twisted down at the corners when she smiled, and in the heaven help us, in the almost passionate quality of her eyes. Vitality is born early in such women. It was utterly in evidence now, shining through her thin frame in a sort of glow. She had come early out on the course at 9 o'clock with a white linen nurse and 5 small new golf clubs in a white canvas bag which the nurse was carrying. When Dexter first saw her, she was standing by the caddy house, rather ill at ease and trying to conceal the fact by engaging her nurse in an obviously unnatural conversation, graced by startling and irrelevant grimaces from herself. "Well, it's certainly a nice day, Hilda," Dexter heard her say. She drew down the corners of her mouth, smiled, and glanced furtively around her, eyes in transit falling for an instant on Dexter. Then the nurse. "Well, I guess there aren't very many people out here this morning, are there?" The smile again, radiant, blatantly artificial, convincing. "I don't know what we're supposed to do now," said the nurse, looking now nowhere in particular. "Oh, that's all right. I'll fix it up." Dexter stood perfectly still, his mouth slightly ajar. He knew that if he moved forward a step, his stare would be in her line of vision. If he moved backward, he would lose his full view of her face. For a moment, he had not realized how young she was. Now he remembered having seen her several times the year before in bloomers. Suddenly, involuntarily, he laughed, a short, abrupt laugh. Then, startled by himself, he turned and began to walk quickly away. "Boy," Dexter stopped. "Boy?" Beyond question, he was addressed. Not only that, but he was treated to that absurd smile, that preposterous smile, the memory of which at least a dozen men were to carry into middle age. "Boy, do you know where the golf teacher is?" "He's given a lesson." "Well, do you know where the caddy master is?" "He isn't here yet this morning." "Oh." For a moment, this baffled her. She stood alternately on right and left foot. "We'd like to get a caddy," said the nurse. "Mrs. Mortimer Jones sent us out to play golf, and if we don't know how without we get a caddy." Here she was stopped by an ominous glance from Miss Jones, followed immediately by the smile. "There aren't any caddies here except me," said Dexter to the nurse, and I got to stay here in charge until the caddy master gets here." "Oh?" Miss Jones and her retinue now withdrew, and at a proper distance from Dexter became involved in a heated conversation, which was concluded by Miss Jones taking one of the clubs and hitting it on the ground with violence. For further emphasis, she raised it again and was about to bring it down smartly upon the nurse's bosom when the nurse seized the club and twisted it from her hands. "You damn little mean old thing!" cried Miss Jones wildly. Another argument ensued. Realizing that the elements of the comedy were implied in the scene, Dexter several times began to laugh, but each time restrained the laugh before it reached audibility. He could not resist the monstrous conviction that the little girl was justified in beating the nurse. The situation was resolved by the fortuitous appearance of the caddy master, who was appealed to immediately by the nurse. "Miss Jones is to have a little caddy, and this one says he can't go." "Mr. McKenna said I was to wait here till you came," said Dexter quickly. "Well, he's here now." Miss Jones smiled cheerfully at the caddy master. Then she dropped her bag and set off at a haughty mince toward the first tee. "Well," said the caddy master, turned to Dexter, "what are you standing there like a dummy for? Go pick up the young ladies' clubs." "I don't think I'll go out today," said Dexter. "You don't?" I think I'll quit. The enormity of his decision frightened him. He was a favorite caddy, and the $30 a month he earned through the summer were not to be made elsewhere around the lake. But he had received a strong emotional shock, and his perturbation required a violent and immediate outlet. It is not so simple as that, either, as so frequently would be the case in the future. Dexter was unconsciously dedicated to by his winter dreams.